Picture a winter wind clawing at your windows, slipping through every crack, stealing warmth from your home. You turn to the thermostat, waiting for the familiar click, the reassuring hum of the furnace. But tonight, there is nothing. Maybe the grid collapsed under ice, maybe the gas lines froze, or maybe the bill for heat has climbed beyond what you can bear. In seconds, your home shifts from sanctuary to refrigerator. As the cold creeps in, a truth settles over you. Our comfort depends on fragile systems, on wires, ducts, and constant electricity just to keep our blood warm. For a century, we've tried to heat air, a losing fight against physics itself. But what if the path we chose was the wrong one? What if people more than 100 years ago had already solved this problem with simple physics, not sprawling infrastructure? And what if their forgotten solution, born in the Victorian era, perfected by a Croatian inventor in 1903, is not only 80 times cheaper than your heater, but one of the smartest survival tools we still have? Welcome to Historia Prime. Today we uncover why a Victorian heat trick is exploding across the modern world. We explore the science of thermal mass, the rise of the humble hot water bottle, and the ingenious back-to-back method that can keep you warm for 12 hours with no electricity at all. Is central heating a trap disguised as progress? Who was Slavoljub Eduard Penkala, the man who reinvented nighttime warmth? And why are survivalists, families, and budget-strapped households abandoning smart thermostats for rubber, copper, and boiling water? Pull the blankets tight. We're about to revive a lost technology that may once again decide who stays warm when everything else fails. Part 1. The Era of Embers. A dangerous warmth. Before we can understand the brilliance of the Victorian heat trick, we need to return to a time when winter was not an inconvenience, but a genuine threat. Imagine stepping back to the 16th century, into a stone castle or a wooden cottage, where the moment the sun disappeared, the cold took command. There was no central heating humming through vents, no insulation hiding in the walls. The air inside your home could be just as merciless as the air outside, and surviving the night became a daily negotiation with freezing temperatures. For centuries, humanity relied on one desperate tool, the bed warmer. Today you might see one displayed in a museum, long-handled, polished brass or copper, looking almost ceremonial. But do not let the beauty fool you. These were instruments forged from fear. Every night, someone would shovel live coals from the hearth, drop them into the metal pan, close the perforated lid, and drag this fiery disc between icy sheets. Steam hissed, frost retreated, and for a brief moment the bed felt habitable. Yet this warmth came with a cost, and often with tragedy. You could never fall asleep with a bed warmer in place. One stray ember, one spark through a crack in the metal, and the mattress could erupt into flame. The danger was so notorious that entire families were lost to house fires that began not in recklessness, but in desperation. Desperation to feel warm for just a few minutes longer. If the fire didn't kill you, the invisible threat beneath the lid might. Carbon monoxide poisoning was a silent hunter in those rooms. So the ritual was always the same: scorch the sheets, remove the pan, and hope the fading warmth could carry you through the night. It rarely did. As hours passed, frost crept back through the blankets, biting into hands, feet, and bone. Every night became a countdown, a race between body heat and the killing cold. By the early 19th century, humanity finally admitted the truth. You cannot sleep safely with fire. We needed a new medium for heat, something that could store energy without setting the house ablaze, something that could act as a thermal battery. And so, water entered the story. In the 1800s, people turned to earthenware bottles, thick stoneware vessels sealed with corks. They looked like pottery shells, heavy and blunt. But unlike coals, they were safe, and they harnessed the extraordinary thermal mass of heated water. Slip one of these into your bed, and it stayed warm far longer than the fading embers ever could. Still, this solution was crude. These bottles were rigid and unforgiving. Kick one accidentally, and you might break a toe, or worse, shatter the bottle and unleash scalding water beneath your blankets. They warmed the bed, but they were clumsy, fragile, and often uncomfortable to sleep beside. What humanity needed was a heat source that could bend without breaking, press gently against the body, and store warmth without danger. We needed a material that behaved like a living thing, flexible, durable, and safe. The revolution was coming, and it would arrive in 1903, carried in the hands of a Croatian inventor who would quietly change the way the world sleeps forever. Stay with me. The next chapter reveals the birth of the device that would outlast coal pans, survive world wars, and conquer winter in a way no furnace ever could. Part 2. The Rubber Revolution and the Man Who Invented Comfort. If the 19th century gave us the idea of storing heat safely, then April 20th, 1903 gave us the breakthrough that finally perfected it. On this day, quiet, ordinary, easily forgotten, the modern hot water bottle was born, and with it, the blueprint for one of the simplest, cheapest, and most reliable survival tools ever created. The man behind this revolution was Slavoljub Eduard Penkala, a name that feels unfamiliar today, yet his inventions sit in our drawers, our classrooms, and yes, many of our cupboards. Penkala was born in Slovakia, raised by a Polish father and Dutch mother, and later became a naturalized Croatian engineer. But calling him an engineer barely scratches the surface. He was a polymath, someone whose mind jumped effortlessly between chemistry, aviation, and everyday problem-solving. You might recognize his name from another creation, the mechanical pencil, still called a Penkala in parts of Europe. He even designed Croatia's first two-seat airplane in 1910. Yet his greatest legacy was not in the sky or on the writing desk. It was in the cold, dark bedrooms of Europe, where winter could make even the bravest person dread the night. Penkala looked at the old stoneware warmers and saw their flaws: heavy, rigid, brittle, and dangerous. He understood that the solution wasn't more ceramic, it was a new material entirely, and so he turned to the emerging science of vulcanized rubber, a process Charles Goodyear had discovered decades earlier. Vulcanization transformed sticky, fragile, natural rubber into something durable, flexible, and resistant to heat. In Penkala's hands, this material became the thermophore, the world's first truly modern hot water bottle. Unlike the earthenware heaters, the thermophore was not confined to the foot of the bed like a lump of warm rock. It could be pressed against the chest, tucked near the stomach, molded around the spine, or wrapped around freezing feet. For the first time in history, heat was not just present in the room, it was wearable, it was personal, it moved with you. Penkala understood this on a deeper level than most inventors. He marketed the thermophore not merely as a comfort object, but as a medical device capable of easing rheumatism and improving circulation. And medically, he wasn't wrong. For the first time, people could safely keep a heat source beside them for the entire night, something impossible with coal pans and risky with ceramic bottles. The thermophore spread across Europe with astonishing speed. Hospitals adopted it, hotels stocked it, rural families treasured it. In regions where winter was less a season and more a test of endurance, the thermophore became indispensable. But progress has a way of blinding us. As the 20th century unfolded, humanity fell in love with switches, wires, and glowing thermostats. Electric blankets appeared. Central heating systems promised effortless comfort. And little by little, the thermophore faded from memory, not because it stopped working, but because we stopped paying attention. We traded a resilient technology for one that depended entirely on fuel, infrastructure, and a fragile grid. We forgot that the simplest tools are often the most reliable. And then, in the face of rising energy costs, grid instability, and a renewed fascination with self-reliance, the thermophore returned. Not as nostalgia, not as a relic, but as a survival tool hidden in plain sight, ready to reclaim its throne. Stay with me. In the next chapter, we'll break down the physics that make this humble invention not just quaint, but superior to modern heating in ways most people never imagine. Part 3. The physics of the trick. Why it beats your heating. Why has a Victorian heat trick exploded across the modern world? Why are families, survivalists and budget-pressed households turning off their central heating and turning on their kettles instead? The answer is not nostalgia. It is physics. Pure, unforgiving physics. Conduction versus convection. To understand the difference, picture your modern heating system. Whether it burns gas, consumes electricity, or pumps oil, its mission is the same: heat the air. It pushes warm air through vents, fills rooms from ceiling to floor, and tries to maintain a temperature across thousands of cubic feet. But air, unfortunately, is one of the worst thermal batteries on Earth. It has almost no ability to store heat. It leaks warmth the moment it meets a cold surface. Every wall absorbs it, every window drains it, every draft steals it. When you heat your home with convection, you are paying, sometimes painfully, to warm empty space, praying that a fraction of that energy eventually touches your skin. Water, by contrast, is a thermal superpower. Its specific heat capacity is more than 4 times that of air. A single liter can store staggering amounts of energy and release it slowly, consistently, and reliably. When you use a hot water bottle, you are no longer heating a room. You are heating a microenvironment, your microenvironment. The small, insulated world beneath your blankets becomes your survival zone. Think about it like wilderness survival. If you were trapped in a winter forest, you wouldn't try to build a bonfire big enough to warm the entire mountain. You would build a small fire, bring it close, and shield the heat with your body. This Victorian method simply applies that ancient logic indoors. Conduction, heat delivered directly to your body, is far more efficient than convection, which wastes most of its energy on the air around you. But the true masters of this trick go one step further. They graduate from rubber to metal. Pencala's rubber thermophore is wonderfully flexible and safe, but rubber insulates. It holds heat inside, releasing it gently, meaning it cools off gradually through the night. Copper and brass, on the other hand, conduct heat rapidly and store it deeply. When you pour boiling water into a copper bottle and wrap it in a thick towel or wool cozy, you create a slow-release thermal reactor. Survivalists who have tested both methods report a dramatic difference. By morning, a rubber bottle often cools to a mild warmth, maybe 90 degrees Fahrenheit. But a copper bottle, wrapped and insulated in bedding, can still radiate heat between 110 and 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Not just warm, actively heating your microclimate. It is the difference between surviving a freezing night and actually sleeping through it comfortably. It transforms your bed from a passive pile of blankets into a well-insulated thermal engine. And in a world where energy costs spike, grids flicker, and storms grow stronger, understanding this physics isn't just interesting, it's empowering. In the next chapter, we dive into the advanced techniques that Victorians perfected and modern preppers rediscovered. Because once you understand the science, you can start bending heat to your will. Part 4. Advanced Techniques. The Art of the Heat. Now that we understand the physics, let's move into the part that has taken over social media, the techniques. Because you don't just toss a bottle into your bed and call it a night. The Victorians understood that warmth is an art, and like any art, there is method, precision, and discipline. The first technique is known as the Italian farmhouse method, or more simply, the back-to-back arrangement. In the stone farmhouses of rural Italy and across old Europe, winter nights could plunge into temperatures that froze water inside the house. A single hot water bottle didn't stand a chance, and so people developed a simple yet brilliant trick. They tied two hot water bottles together, or wrapped them in one thick towel, pressing them firmly back to back. The magic here is geometry and thermodynamics working together. When the bottles face outward and their backs touch, the inner surfaces are shielded from the cold. The surface area exposed to the freezing air is cut nearly in half, while the heat energy stored inside is effectively doubled. The result is a dual-core heat reactor, a concentrated nest of warmth that behaves like a miniature radiator beneath your blankets. Instead of two bottles cooling independently, they protect each other, slow each other's heat loss, and stabilize a warm zone that lasts deep into the night. Survivalists today call it sleeping bag insulation because the heat remains trapped and controlled exactly where your body needs it. The second technique is just as ancient, and perhaps even more important. It is the 15-minute pre-warm. Many modern users make the mistake of hugging a hot water bottle all night, pressing it directly against exposed skin. Yet the real Victorian wisdom says the opposite. You place the bottle in your bed before you enter it, about 15 minutes early, nestled beneath layers of wool or a thick duvet. The bottle releases an intense but controlled wave of heat that saturates the fibers of the mattress and blankets. It creates a pocket of perfectly warmed air ready for you the moment you slip under the covers. But here is the key. Once the bed is warm, you move the bottle to the foot of the bed or remove it altogether. This is not superstition, it is physiology. Your body operates under a mechanism known as the hunting reaction, a cycle of dilation and constriction of blood vessels in response to prolonged heat or cold. Keep a hot object pressed against your skin for hours and your body becomes confused, overheating some areas, cooling others, disrupting your sleep cycles. Scientific research also shows that deep, restorative sleep requires a slight drop in core body temperature. Too much heat, too long, and your brain never settles into that crucial restorative rhythm. A pre-warmed bed gives you the luxury of falling asleep instantly without the biological tug-of-war. You get the comfort and the sleep quality. And for vulnerable people, infants, the elderly, diabetics, the pre-warm isn't just smart, it's essential. Reduced sensation in the limbs means a hot bottle pressed against the skin can cause burns long before pain is felt. The Victorian method avoids this completely by using the bed as the thermal battery, not the bottle as a direct heater. These techniques may look simple, but behind them is a century of trial, error, and lived experience. They transform an ordinary hot water bottle into a survival tool, a sleep enhancer, and a shockingly efficient heating system hiding in plain sight. And in the next chapter, we'll see how this trick isn't only about comfort or cleverness, it's also about money. Because the Victorian heat method isn't just warm, it's 80 times cheaper than what most people are using today. Part 5. The Economics of Survival. The 6P Solution. We've explored the history, we've examined the physics, but now we arrive at the part that hits every household, every family budget, and every sleepless night staring at the electricity bill. Because this Victorian heat trick isn't just clever, it isn't just nostalgic, it is, quite literally, a financial weapon. Let's break it down with simple numbers that anyone can understand. Boiling a standard electric kettle, 1.7 liters of water, 4 minutes of heating, consumes about 0.2 kilowatt-hours. In today's energy climate, that's roughly 6 pence in the United Kingdom, or 8 to 10 cents in the United States. For that tiny cost, you buy yourself 8 to 10 hours of steady warmth inside your insulated microenvironment. Not the whole house, not the hallway, not the ceiling, the walls, and the corners where heat goes to die. Just you. Just the space your body actually occupies. Now compare that to a typical electric space heater. 2 kilowatts, 8 hours, 16 kilowatt-hours consumed in a single night. That's nearly £5 in the UK, $6 or more in the US, for one night. Multiply that by a month or a season, and the numbers become breathtaking. Do the math, and the truth becomes impossible to ignore. A hot water bottle is 80 times cheaper than a space heater. Not twice, not 10 times, 80. If you embraced the Victorian method for an entire winter, say 150 nights, you could save more than £700, or almost $900. That isn't spare change. That's a mortgage payment. That's a month of groceries. That's the difference between enduring winter and surviving it on your own terms. And here's the part many people overlook. Even if you have a gas-powered central heating system, which is typically cheaper than electric heating, the waste is enormous. Why heat the living room while you're asleep in the bedroom? Why send warmth into the kitchen at 3 in the morning, or push it down empty corridors or into unused spaces? A house doesn't need warmth at night. You do. By turning the thermostat down to the bare minimum required to keep your pipes from freezing and relying on hot water bottles for personal comfort, the savings multiply dramatically. Estimates show it can be 20 to 30 times cheaper than running gas central heating through the night. This is why the trick went viral, not because it's quaint or charming, but because it is the ultimate act of rebellion against skyrocketing energy prices. It is a practical escape hatch from a system that punishes you for trying to stay warm. In a world where everything feels more expensive, where energy is unstable, and where families everywhere are trying to stretch every pound and every dollar, this Victorian solution offers something radical: control. And in the next chapter, we'll see that this wasn't just a household hack. Armies adopted it, medics depended on it, and in the darkest moments of war, hot water wasn't just warmth, it was survival itself. Part 6. Military Precision, when water means life. The Victorian heat trick may feel like a humble household hack today, but its true power becomes undeniable when we look at the battlefield. Because this obsession with heated water was not simply about comfort. At one point in history, it was a matter of national survival. During the brutal winters of World War I, the British Army faced a terrifying problem. Field hospitals were often nothing more than canvas tents or makeshift huts in open fields, exposed to freezing winds with no electricity and almost no fuel. Wounded soldiers arriving from the trenches weren't just fighting their injuries, they were fighting hypothermia, shock, and infection, all accelerated by the cold. The Royal Army Medical Corps turned to a device called the Griffith Sterilizer, a portable heat exchange system capable of rapidly heating water with remarkable efficiency. It wasn't luxurious, it wasn't elegant, but it was fast, reliable, and could function under battlefield pressure. They discovered that water heated to just 80 degrees Celsius was enough to sterilize instruments, disinfect wounds, and, critically, warm the human body without causing burns or wasting precious fuel. And here is where past and present collide. The same principles used to save lives in the trenches are the very principles behind your hot water bottle. Portability, heat retention, maximum warmth for minimum fuel. Soldiers learned quickly that hot water was more than a medical tool. It was a lifeline. In the mud-soaked trenches, they often filled 2-gallon petrol cans with hot water to prevent the freezing of machine guns. Yet when darkness fell and temperatures dropped below zero, those same cans became makeshift heaters. Men huddled around them, cradled them, or slipped them under coats just to keep their core temperature stable through the night. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. Over and over again. And so, when you fill a hot water bottle tonight, either from a kettle, a stove, or a campfire, you're not just using a cozy winter accessory. You are holding a piece of tactical survival gear refined across centuries of hardship. A device proven in hospitals, in trenches, and in some of the harshest environments humans have ever endured. No microchips, no electricity, no Wi-Fi, just fire, and water, and a thermal principle so powerful that armies trusted it with human lives. In the next chapter, we'll explore one final truth, that even the greatest survival tool can become dangerous if misused. Because before you warm your bed with Victorian wisdom, you must first learn how to avoid the silent hazards that come with it. Part 7. Quality and Safety. Don't get burned. Before anyone rushes to buy a hot water bottle after hearing how powerful and cost-effective this Victorian trick is, there is one final truth we must confront. Because like all survival tools, simple does not mean harmless, and without the right precautions, a device meant to keep you warm can turn into something that causes real injury. The rubber bottles we buy today are not the indestructible workhorses Penkala engineered in the early 1900s. Modern rubber, cheaper, thinner, mass-produced, degrades. It oxidizes silently over time, and as it ages, it becomes brittle. Invisible cracks begin to form, seams weaken, until one winter night, under pressure and heat, the bottle bursts, and boiling water pours onto your skin. This is why you must check something called the daisy wheel. On the neck of every legitimate hot water bottle is a tiny flower-shaped stamp with numbers printed inside the petals. That stamp is the manufacturing date, and if that date shows your bottle is more than 2 or 3 years old, the rule is simple. Throw it away. Do not negotiate. Do not gamble. Do not think, just one more winter. The risk is not worth the handful of coins you save. And there is another rule, one the Victorians understood intuitively, but that many people today ignore. Never, under any circumstances, pour boiling water into a rubber bottle. Not straight from the kettle, not from a rolling boil. Because boiling water attacks rubber instantly. It softens seams, stresses the stopper, and builds steam pressure inside the bottle. One mistake, one tiny flaw, and it can explode. Hot water bottles were designed for hot water, not steam. The ideal temperature is around 80 degrees Celsius, comfortably below boiling, yet perfectly capable of storing heat for hours. If you're using a kettle, let it rest for a minute or two before pouring. That small pause can prevent a major burn. But what if you want the heat of truly boiling water? What if you want maximum retention, the longest possible warming time, the full thermal punch? Then rubber is not the right tool. You must invest in a metal bottle, often copper or brass, or a modern Japanese utampo made of hard, heat-resistant plastic. These containers are engineered for thermal shock. They can handle boiling water safely and release heat slowly without risking rupture. So before you embrace this Victorian heat trick fully, learn this final lesson. A hot water bottle is a powerful ally, but only when treated with respect. And now, with history, physics, economics, military tactics, and safety behind us, we arrive at the final chapter. The truth that this forgotten invention is not a step backward into the past, but a step forward into a more resilient future. Conclusion: reclaiming our resilience. We often imagine the past as cold, dark, and primitive. We picture Victorians huddled in drafty rooms, dreaming of the luxuries we enjoy today. Thermostats that glow, furnaces that roar to life at the tap of a screen, entire homes kept warm with a whisper of electricity. But perhaps it is not the Victorians who are lacking. Perhaps it is us who have drifted too far from the fundamentals. Because in our hunger for convenience, we traded away something precious: resilience. We built lives on systems so complex and fragile that a single ice storm, a sudden blackout, or a spike in energy costs can unravel the entire illusion of comfort. We forgot how to warm ourselves without asking an electrical grid for permission. We forgot the physics that our ancestors lived by instinctively. And in that forgetting, we lost agency over one of the most basic elements of survival: heat. The Victorian heat trick is not just a penny-saving hack. Though it does save money, often more than people expect, it is, at its core, a reminder. A reminder that understanding the world, its patterns, its physics, its thermodynamics, gives you power. A reminder that warmth is not something we must buy in bulk, but something we can craft, contain, and conserve with intention. With nothing more than a rubber invention from 1903 or a copper bottle perfected in the 1890s, you can reclaim mastery over winter. You don't need to heat the walls. You don't need to heat the furniture. You don't need to tame the air of an entire house. You only need to heat yourself. So tonight, try it. Turn the thermostat down just a little. Let the wind howl outside while you fill a kettle and pour its heat into something simple and time-tested. Channel your inner Penkala. Create a pocket of warmth shaped not by technology, but by understanding. Feel the weight of the water. Feel the slow, steady release of energy. Feel the comfort of a bed warmed not by machines, but by physics itself. Because when the grid goes dark, or when the next bill arrives like a slap on the table, the humble hot water bottle will still be there, silent, reliable, and brilliant. Not a relic, not a novelty, but one of the smartest, most efficient pieces of technology you already own. And this is Historia Prime. Stay warm, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next chapter of history.